Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 412.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because you are going to learn a lot. In fact, I believe that this is going to be one of those episodes where you're going to refer to often when you are looking and trying to understand how to make your revenues grow. More importantly, how to build that cash flow. What is it that makes businesses valuable, and how on earth can you go out there to take what you might see as something small and grow it into what today's guest would call a global powerhouse. I have with me today none other than Stephen Blue. He's the president and CEO of Miller Ingenuity, a global supplier of mission-critical components in the transportation industry. And what's really interesting to think about is that he's been in charge of really, really large amounts of revenue. And by really, really large amounts, I mean hundreds of millions. And at the same time, he likes helping all of us understand what it is that we can do. In fact, he's done so in the form of many different books. And I love the titles, and I want you to just listen so you can get an understanding of who it is that you're about to listen to. I mean, we're one of the titles or subtitles in particular speaks to me because it says unlocking the double-digit profit code. I'm like, that's good. The $10 million employee, where your most toxic liability meets your most important customer. And the book that is resonating, the title that I think we all need to hear about right now is American Manufacturing 2.0, What Went Wrong and How to Make It Right. Now, I think, as I said, his vast experience, we're going to do our best to ask him all the right questions. This is going to help you and I go out there and build our cash flow bigger, better, better, and definitely faster in a time when we need it most. So pull out that pen, that iPad, whatever you're using to take notes, and listen to Stephen Blue. Steve, you there?
I'm here, Jay. How are you?
So far, pretty good. Glad that you were taking the time to be able to help all of us, just do our best to provide more jobs and create more value. Now, with that being said, though, this is your first time here. So I tend to ask everybody the same question the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them, as an entrepreneur, occasionally we can imagine ourselves, leveraging our products and services and maybe even dressing up in capes and tights and saving customers with our skill sets. But also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about, Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where before he was Spider-Man, he was just a college kid going to school, getting good grades, then one day he gets bit by a spider and realizes that he's got this new superhuman ability and he gets to choose to use it for good or evil. So what we want to know is, before being featured in places like Entrepreneur and Forbes and CNBC Business Week and all the things that you are now known for today, what we want to know is, who is Stephen Blue?
Well, I'll tell you, speaking of a defining moment, when Peter Parker got bit by the spider, that was a defining moment for him, and that changed everything for him. I can tell you almost to the month when things changed for me. And I've had a lot of experience, a lot of places that I've learned how to do things, but what really changed my business life and my outlook and started the fundamentals of the 3 books that I wrote was when I spent 7 years in a turnaround. And you'll appreciate this, Jay, because in a turnaround, cash is king. And
Right.
as I'm sure you know, when you work for larger companies, it's like you're playing with funny money. It's like you're playing Monopoly. Or it's like you're playing with somebody else's money. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's not real. When you're in a turnaround, we often had to choose between paying a light bill or paying payroll. I mean,
Right.
things were that tight. And so I learned the importance of cash flow in the turnaround and the importance of a lot of CEOs, especially in larger companies, like to think like strategically, 20 years out, 10 years out, 5 years out, 7 years out. If you can't make payroll today, you don't have to worry about 5 years from now. So those were where I started to learn important lessons about cash and about strict operational control. And most of your listeners will either know or should know you have to have strict operational control over your business all the time. Otherwise, it gets away from you. But the other thing I learned, Jay, and the more important lesson I learned, we worked in such a toxic environment. We'd go to daily beatings. Daily meetings.
I like that.
That would start about 8 o'clock in the morning and wouldn't end up until 8 o'clock at night. You weren't allowed to leave the room. We'd break for a half hour for dinner, and then you had to come back. And they were basically beatings on, why isn't this? Why is it not that? Why didn't you do this? Why'd you do that? And everybody in that room, all they wanted to do was get out alive. And they figured the way to get out alive was by blaming each other for what went wrong. Now, imagine what a dysfunctional environment that creates. And,
Wow.
and you don't need in our case, it was a room of 12 guys, right? 12 executives. You don't need 12 executives to have a dysfunctional, toxic environment. You can have 3. You can have 2 business partners and have a toxic, dysfunctional environment. So the most important lesson I learned, what defined me was, Jay, I swore I would never work in an environment like that again, where I literally would be sick to my stomach before I came to work. Now, and then, of course, the flip side of that is when you have a super, super terrific environment and what I call a culture by design and not by default, it's amazing the extraordinary things a company could do. So that framed my whole leadership outlook on two fronts: strict operational control, and don't ever let toxicity creep into the culture.
Totally understood. And I think there's a number of people who are listening right now, actually, one, probably surprised when you said you spent 7 years in a turnaround, and someone probably said, it took 7 years? Why did it take so long?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It was not a turnaround at the beginning, but it was headed toward that way. And in the middle, maybe not even in the middle, a couple of years into the turnaround, the company that claimed that it would never sell us put us on the auction block. And so we spent 2 to 3 of the next years entertaining potential acquirers and then doing the actual diligence. So the actual turnaround itself was only about 2 years, but I spent 7 years in that environment.
Got it. Totally understood. Now, and I also know that you probably shocked a few people when you said, light bill versus payroll. For those that, maybe that are newer to the whole entrepreneur space and haven't experienced this, we'll call it joy of going, oh, payroll's coming. Expound upon that, because I know some of them are wondering, what do you mean you had to choose between light bill and payroll? You got to do both. That's not a choice.
Well, yes and no. You have to do both, but you don't have to do them both on the same day. Let's put it that way. Anybody who is an entrepreneur or is in a startup or even a small company, you get faced with cash decisions almost every day, or certainly on a weekly basis. And you really do need, now you're going to turn the lights on, that's for sure. You're going to pay employees, that's for sure. But you have to be very careful how you manage your cash flow. In other words, I'll give an example. If you're considering purchasing a piece of capital equipment or a software, package or whatever, you better make sure that you can collect your receivables that you're expecting from your customers in a timely fashion enough to be able to make that payroll and to make that light bill, or you better hold off on that software or capital equipment purchase. That's just one example.
Yeah, and I've faced this question more typically when I'm looking to bring on a new person. It's like it's like one of those catch-22s. You're like, I think we need a new person, or usually I'm really certain we need a new person, but it's like, is now the time? Because you end up in this. If I don't, then there's opportunity cost that we're paying, and if I do, and then something goes south, we got a problem. How does an entrepreneur resolve that particular conflict?
Well, I know exactly what you speak. The other analogy to that is every time I've ever tried to add on to my building, business went to hell in a handbasket as soon as I started brick and mortar.
Right.
You're laughing. You know what I'm talking about.
I do. It's like everything feels fine at that moment, and then 3 weeks later, 2 days later, you're like, really?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And I don't have any silver bullets for this, but I can tell you, of course, you're going to do the best analysis as you can. You're going to be very analytic about it. What's the market look like? What kind of orders can I expect? How soon will it take this employee to generate income, and all that kind of stuff. You're going to do all that analytical stuff, but at the end of the day, your gut is going to tell you something, and your gut isn't going to be any good until you've made a lot of mistakes in your life. And after you've made a lot of mistakes in your life, you'll find that your gut instincts, and there's been a lot of studies on this, that the analytical side is really not as effective and efficient and successful as the gut side. But you have to make a lot of mistakes before your gut starts to warn you when you're about to make another one. And to me, I do all the analytics, because you have to do that for your boards and your investors and all that sort of thing. And then it's like, what does my gut tell me about the right thing to do right now? And I am always, the last lever I pull is hire more people if I don't have to, because as you know, that's a big liability. And you don't want to bring somebody on board just to have to lay them off in a few months.
Right.
And so I'll do temporaries, I'll do contractors, I'll ask people to work a little extra. I got to be damn certain before I start adding people, because that becomes a whole different problem.
Totally understood. Now, you said something that I think may actually scare a few people. You said your gut is no good until you've made a lot of mistakes. I know there's right now a number of people who are listening who are sitting on the sidelines because their gut is telling them, maybe they've never done anything before, and they're going, it doesn't feel right. So, and they're listening to it, but you're placing a premium on something that we're taught not to do, at least during the educational phase, which is make mistakes. Why do you say this?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, let me say that I'm known for saying things that scare people. So you should be ready. I'm not done yet. I'm just getting started. And you're right. The business schools have all been preaching the analytical side forever, and it's just like practicing medicine. Well, they don't call it practicing for nothing.
Right.
Doctors don't know everything, and they can't solve everything, and neither can business practitioners. Although the academics would like you to believe that you can, you just really can't. And so you have to have both. You have to have the analytics side, and you have to have the gut side. In my view, one is no good without the other. Analytics side is really easy. The MBAs, and I have one too, by the way, so I'm not picking on anybody. The MBAs will say, you do the financial analysis, and the answer is X. So you have to do that, but then your gut has to tell you, does that look right? I mean, does that feel right in the world and in the context I'm in right now? So both of them have to come into play. But my point about making mistakes is the only reason my gut is pretty good, and it is because it knows when I'm about to make a mistake, because I've made many before.
But we grew up in a culture that says, get it right the first time, and God forbid should you ask anybody for help.
Oh God, no! Look at it this way, right? What would you consider a terrific batting average? You've heard this analogy before, right?
Yeah, sure.
7 out of every times you miss, and you're a terrific batter. And I always tell people when I do keynote speeches, I say, look, I always tell them you cannot win the hand unless you place the bet. So you're going to have to place the bet. I'm sorry, that's the bad news. And you cannot win you cannot knock it over the bleachers if you don't take a swing. And I just did a commencement address the other night, and I said, the most important thing that you have in your career that you want to carry with you at all times is belief in yourself. Mm. Always believe in yourself, right? Believe in what your plans are. Believe in what your aspirations are. Believe in your abilities, especially when no one else does. And I said, you're going to be wrong about half the time when you'll always believe your plans are right. I'm sorry, that's the bad news. But you're going to be right half the time. And if you don't believe in yourself and you're always blowing in the wind to what other people want you to do, and I bet you know this better than most people, Jay. Most people probably told you, Jay, you can't have a podcast. Are you kidding me? It's not going to be that good. It'll never work. It'll never sell. You'll never get advertising. You'll never get gas. Did they?
Yeah. Well, not only that, I was told to go get a job. It was pretty awesome.
That's what I mean. And so the planet is poised and ready to tell you not to do anything, because that makes them feel better, because they're not doing anything if you don't do anything. So that's where I say, make the mistakes. Be comfortable in making mistakes, because you're going to continue to make them. The only way you won't continue to make mistakes is if you don't do anything.
Well, and you bring up this concept of believing in yourself, which leads to that, what I call that superhero defining moment, like we were talking about. There's a number of people who I know, or, that right now they're probably on their commute to a place where they don't want to be, and they've got ideas. They want to do something, but developing the enough courage to actually strike out on your own and do anything. And you've written not one, not two, but 3 different books, and that takes a level of courage to make that happen. You've gone into companies and said, ooh, this is a bad situation, but I can fix it. We can get this right. And you're like, okay. I mean, all of those things take what I would call a superhero amount of courage. So where does that come from, so that maybe some of those listening can actually begin to pick up on that?
Well, it has to start with belief. If you don't believe what your ideas or what your program or plan or aspirations are, well, you won't be able to get the courage for it. So it all starts with belief. And I did a keynote at an Industry Week conference in Cleveland just a couple of days ago, and I was describing to people how they can take a Rust Belt company, basically a low technology company, and turn it into a high technology, high margin kind of a situation with high tech patented products and all that. Mm. And I was warning them, when you try to do this, if you're in a Rust Belt situation, or your company's been in a steady state situation for many, many years, no one's going to like the idea of doing this. Your board won't like it, your shareholders won't like it, your employees won't like it, no one's going to like it, everybody's going to be against you. And someone asked me, he said, well, how do you deal with it? I said, you buckle up, man. You buckle up and you strap on your flak vest, and you take the bullets and you take the arrows and you go, thank you for your advice. And then you just move on. You have to blow right through it. And I said, you know what? I said, in your career and in your major decisions, you will be wrong until you're proven right. You just got to hang on until you're proven right.
Right. I mean, I wish it was, sometimes I wish that was an easier pill to swallow, but and everybody wants an answer that's easier than that, because it can feel lonely, and you feel like, is this thing ever going to be proven right? And what is that going to take? And we don't know. We're committing to an unknown length of time before we're proven right. And you've got to be willing to stick it out until that happens. And
well, you do. You absolutely do. And you know what? What? You have to be, you're selling it all the time. Okay. You're hanging on to the naysayers. You're hanging on to your belief. You're going to keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. But at the same time, you have to keep selling to the naysayers, especially your board and your investors. You have to keep selling them every opportunity you can. To keep them at least in a place where they don't adversely react against you until you get to the point where it's apparent. I can't tell you how many times that I've introduced new products into companies where the shareholders said, you got to be crazy. This is dumb. Don't do it. We've never done anything like it. And then fast forward to a year or two later, when they're wildly successful, they're patting each other on the back and going, yeah, boy, that was a good idea we had, wasn't it? And that's the process you go through.
Right. Totally understood. Totally understood. Now you brought this up, and because I think you and I think very similarly in one particular vein when it comes to part of the solution. I mean, I think part of the solution when it comes to the United States and just financial things in general is that more of us become entrepreneurs. Specifically, we become entrepreneurs that have something to export and manufacture, etc. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on what entrepreneurs can do to do their part. Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey, and what I want to say to you is that the number one mistake that I have ever made in business, number one, has been waiting too long to do the books, waiting too long to get the bookkeepers, the accountants, the CPAs, the CFOs involved, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. That mistake cost me over 6 figures, and now for a significant discount, you have the ability to get your books together using FreshBooks. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. FreshBooks is the easy to use software designed to help you, the small business owner, the freelancer, get organized and save time on invoicing, getting paid faster, keeping those books in order so that it becomes a bonus for you to do your taxes as opposed to a burden. Go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary and get started today. And now let's get back to the rest of the story.
Well, here's the biggest problem. I could talk trade deals till I'm blue in the face, and that's part of the problem. Currency manipulation, all that stuff.
Right.
Your audience already knows about. Okay, fine. So, see, what happens now is people who are running businesses, entrepreneurs, not entrepreneurs, whatever, the ones that have been grumbling about the bad trade deals and how they can't do it, well, poor me, I can't do anything about it. Now they get a problem because when those trade deals get more balanced in our favor, they have nobody else to blame. And the most important point that an entrepreneur can take away and act on is you now will have, I think, a better shot at being competitive on a global stage than you did a year ago or 2 years ago. Or at least now you'll have a better shot. So get ready for it. Don't sit. If anybody in your audience wants to sit and wait to see what happens with these trade deals and what the result is of the trade deals, they're going to miss a certain part of the market because their competitors are liable to jump on it. So in other words, I'm telling people all the time, okay, assume the trade deals are going to get done. Assume the taxes are going to get lowered. By how much, who knows, who cares? But be ready with your new products, be ready with your old products, get your marketing programs together, build your inventory, have your inventory ready because you can't sell a product for very long that you can't deliver it. And don't wait for the market to turn in your favor to get all of that ready, because then you're asking for your competition, who at the moment are probably the Chinese. Don't wait for your competition to react, because then you're playing catch up.
Yeah. Totally.
Nobody wants to do that, though. Everyone wants to wait and see how things turn out and wait until everybody all around them says, now's the time to act. Now's the time to act. Well, that's not the time to act. That's way late to act.
Well, wisdom would say, academics would say, wait till the idea is proven. Why take the risk? Of course. And that's not how Apple got to be what it is. That's not how Facebook got to be what it is. The greatest companies in the world, the greatest product in the world, didn't wait around to see if it was going to be whatever. And that's how you get a first mover advantage. I tell guys all the time, place a bet, man. You're in charge. You get paid to place bets, so place a damn bet. Don't wait for the other guy to do it. You know what's funny is that when you say place a bet, I know for me, I have this adverse reaction simply because I can't stand Vegas, right? And I'm thinking when you say place a bet, that. But when it comes down to practically what we as entrepreneurs do every day, that's literally what we're doing. We're actually placing even bigger bets than what some people might be doing down in Vegas. We're placing very huge bets. So when it comes down to it, how does an entrepreneur learn to place a proper bet?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure what a proper bet is. I mean, I know what an improper bet is.
Okay, let's start there then, because we don't do that. But
okay, let's say you spend $1 million developing a new product and you have no idea what the market potential is. That'd be an improper bet, right?
Yeah, that'd be mad.
A proper bet would be there are easier and not so easy ones. A proper bet would be an easy bet, but somebody else would get there before you. Would be, okay, I'm going to spend $1 million, take any number you want, $50,000, $100,000 on this new product of a that would go into a developed market that is known and is quantifiable, and the customers have already, the adoption curve is done already, and people like it, and all I got to do is bring in a Me Too and a copycat, and I'll get something. Well, I don't like bets like that. I don't know how you win at that. I mean, your margins will never be any good, and you'll end up being a commodity. But that would sort of like be a proper but a boring bet. Now, but a fairly certain one in a known situation. Jay, let's look at one that's in an unknown situation. Okay, and I just did this. I spent about $1.5 million on a high technology product in a market that is not yet developed, that I have a lot of belief will be developed, but is not yet developed. So when I had to go to the analytic part of it and quantify what's the market size and all that, I couldn't do it. I could only say, here's the potential market size. If everybody that's potentially affected by this would buy one and so forth, that's not what the market will be. We don't know what the market will be until it actually develops. And so that was what I would call a proper bet, but a risky bet. Not a, you never want to lose the cow. It's okay to lose the pail of milk, but you never want to lose the cow. And so that you don't want to make a bet. Don't ever make a bet that you could lose a whole company over. That would be just plain stupid. But there are degrees of bets that you can make, that you can afford to make, that are more risky than others. And all the risky bets have the bigger payoffs than the not risky ones.
Got it. Now, when you say don't make a bet that you could ever lose the whole company over, that's true if you already have a company. But when you're first starting out, isn't every bet a bet that you could lose the company over?
Yeah, I think it is. Yes and no. I think, if you just start, I'll give you an example. Probably 30 years ago, I started a internet broadcasting company. Can you believe that? Long before they were fashionable, right?
Wow.
I went down to Havana, Cuba, and I did the first internet television broadcast out of Havana. Okay, for a rail industry function in the industry that I'm in. And so it was a pretty big bet in terms of, and so it was a startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just me, and it was I hired a camera crew out of Mexico to come into Cuba because it was illegal to bring anybody in from the United States. I was there as a quote unquote journalist, and so I brought a film crew in from Mexico, and so it was an expensive bet in terms of I had to go out to the bank and I had to borrow $50,000 to make this happen, right? So, okay, fine, making it happen is great. Then you got to sell the damn thing, right? You got to at least break even because you're out for a loan. So, if that worked, by the way, and it was very successful, but if that had failed, what I risked, you're right, was the whole company, because the whole company wasn't worth anything. It was worth the liability of the loan. Wasn't even worth that. And however, if I didn't start with something, there would be nothing to follow up on. So then I went into trade shows in Mexico and built a pretty sizable business just using that as sort of a launch pad. But you're right. As an entrepreneur, every bet is risking the company in a sense, but don't make one so big that now you can't borrow any money because you just blew all your credit facilities, and now you've maxed out on your credit cards, and I can't imagine why you'd want to do that.
Got it. Totally understood. But what's interesting to me is your ability to place bets, and in places where it's just not easy. I mean, a rebranding, a turnaround, that sounds like a lot of work, because that you're coming in to clean up what was in essence a lot of bad bets, and you're going to make good on those. So what would you say are some of the key things? I mean, being someone that has been able to rebrand something, you for those of us who may not be in a rebranding situation or just getting started, what have you learned that says, hey, if you just start out this way, that would be way better?
Well, I've made a career, Jay, out of finding the most difficult, complicated, hard to fix situations and fixing them. And I've been paid a lot of money to do it. I mean, your value is directly in proportion to the problem that you're going to solve.
Right.
A bit of a cliche, but it is true. And so I go looking for the most complicated problems that I can find. I make sure that I'm going to be well paid for them when I fix them, because I need a really big upside, or I'm not going to fuss with the darn thing. And if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm looking at a product to start or a service to start, find the most complicated, complex issue or problem that's not being solved out there and go tackle that, because you're going to spend the same amount of time working on something like that than you are working on something that's easy. So make sure that whatever you're doing has a huge upside. Especially entrepreneurs, Jay, they cannot afford to work with small upsides. They have to have huge upside. It's like a venture capitalist. They look at 15 deals a month, and they're only going to pick the ones that they think they can get a huge upside in, because the downside is so big in that business, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an all or nothing type of thing.
Yeah, right. The entrepreneur, the downside is huge. You go belly up, you got to go back to the bank and beg for forgiveness and go find a job again. Downside is huge. So make sure you're working on a huge upside.
Got it. Yeah, totally understood. Now, with that being said, though, someone could interpret that, and I think I don't want them to interpret it this way, but someone could interpret that as to the neglect of cash flow. But yet earlier you said strict operational control was very, very important.
You have to have strict, but you're working strict operational control on something that has huge upside, not a little bit of upside. It's the same thing. You have to watch your cash flow. If you pick a very complicated situation or a complicated solution that you want to provide, and it has huge upside, your cash flow is going to be the same as if you pick one with a little bit of upside. At some point in time, you'll be able to get the funding for it once it's in the marketplace and it's accepted and you start to get orders. My point is the cash flow and the operational control is the same regardless of the upside, but just go for the big upside.
Well, is there ever any credit for trying a smaller version of the product that has a big upside, just so that you can make sure that you can have enough oxygen to get to where you can realize the full potential or value?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, always test market everything in a small way. It's like when you do these test direct mailings, email.
Right.
You're not going to buy a list with 100 million names. You're going to buy 2,000 names and test it out, change your copy, right, for the next one, and maybe release it for 4,000 names. So you always want to start small, but don't start on anything that doesn't have huge upside.
Got it. And so that we can quantify a few things, especially for those that, everybody has a relative definition. When you say huge upside versus, someone else, one of the sharks on Shark Tank says huge upside versus someone just starting straight from college, huge upside is a very, very relative term. What would you call huge?
You make a good point. I mean, if you're just out of college and you're starting your own business, huge to you could be $100,000.
Right.
Okay. I'm okay with that if you're not going to spend more than 3 or 4 or 5 to get there. But if you're going to spend 40 to get there, I think that'd be a fool's errand. To me, a huge upside, if it doesn't have a whole lot of zeros behind it, I just don't want to be bothered with it, because there's only so much time left in my life and anybody's life.
Right.
And if you're chasing small things, you end up thinking small, you end up planning small, and your results end up being small.
Yeah, I get that. Well, and if I was to ask you, through because you kind of said it yourself, you look for the most difficult thing you can find because you want to go out there and create value, and I totally get that. What would you say would be some of the, like when you go quote unquote prospecting for opportunities, you're looking for those times or those things that there are certain things that I'm sure you now see from, you can see from far away that go, ooh, this is going to become a great opportunity, or meaning they're going to have problems soon. I should make contact, or I should be involved, or this is something I can see the warning signs that you're headed the wrong direction. For those entrepreneurs that are currently in business in some way, shape, or form, what have been the most common ones that you've seen?
Well, you don't have to go looking for these things because they're everywhere. They're all around you. They really are. I mean, when I wrote my second book, The $10 million Employee, When Your Most Toxic Liability Meets Your Important Customer, that was basically a treatment on the service industry. You know yourself, you go walking into a hotel, and the treatment you get in most hotels, and certainly on airlines, is, especially these days, it's just not that good. I'll give you an example. When you get on a business class flight on an airline, those are the most important customers for that airline, because that's who pays the bills. That's where the profit comes from, the airline. And who do they put in charge of the business class? What I call the wombats of the air, the people that have the most seniority and the worst attitudes. You see things like that everywhere. I'll give you an example. You don't have to go looking very far to know what one big new entrepreneur opportunity is. You hear it every day on the news about they're restricting carry-on electronics in airplanes, right? You can't bring laptops in from wherever, Johannesburg or the Middle East, whatever, the United States. Now they're saying they're going to restrict it. Guess what? Somebody, so that's a problem that's right there staring you in the face. You don't have to be Einstein to know that you probably would make a good business out of, in every major airport in the United States, being able to just get off that airplane and I'll hand you a laptop. And it'll be with your software in it. It'll be with your programs on it. We can download from the cloud or whatever. That's going to be it. So if people are in tune to what's going on around them, what the things that irk you the most in your everyday life, they're everywhere. You don't have to go looking for them.
Interesting. You're basically saying you're turning the newspaper, and we'll call it the 24-hour news cycle, into a lead list, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everywhere. It's all around you. There's no shortage. I could spend 3 lifetimes launching new products and services to solve problems that have been around a long time. It doesn't even have to be some, space age technology kind of thing. Just solve the fundamental problems, what really irks people.
Got it. So I've got a couple more questions for you, because I'm just curious to know, what one of the book titles that you got, American Manufacturing 2.0, what went wrong and how to make it right. So the simple question is, what went wrong and how do we make it right?
I'll tell you, this is a really simple answer too. It went wrong when the CEOs of manufacturing companies concluded that they had throwaway workforces. And that could be either as a result of or coincident with, the WTO deal, NAFTA, what almost became the Trans-Pacific Partnership. When those deals were executed, then the CEOs of manufacturing companies basically decided, then they started chasing cheap labor everywhere and cheap tax havens. And so they decided, well, my workforce is not important. What's important is to find the cheapest workforce anywhere on the planet. And they started treating their employees and their workforces as expendable and depreciable assets, instead of treating them and viewing them as renewable resources. And now that these trade deals are going to come unraveled and be more favorably balanced, they have a problem, because they've treated their workforce so bad and ignored their culture. And I talk about culture a lot in all of my books, that they don't know what to do about it now. And until recently, Jay, whenever I talk culture, I'd get a blank stare from a group of CEOs. They go, well, no, it can't be that. No. Don't talk to me. This is the beer and pizza for lunch crowd again. Don't talk to me about culture. Talk to me about the hard stuff. Marketing plans, competitive offerings, capital equipment. Look, I know all that stuff, and I do all that stuff. But I'm telling you, it's like when I say you can't possibly have smart manufacturing if you have a dumb workforce. Right? and I tell CEOs all the time, guess what? If you have a dumb workforce, that's not their fault, buddy. That's your fault because you made them that way or you neglected them until they got that way. And so until lately, I used to have convinced CEOs to pay attention to culture until Wells Fargo did that galactically stupid ghost account thing. That was all a cultural problem. And then United Airlines helped me out. They did, right? And I even wrote a piece about, United Airlines changed their policy, and that's all wrong. The policy was not your problem that day. A culture of people that don't like their own customers and could care less about their customers. That's what caused that problem. And then, of course, Uber. I wrote a piece that culture is a 4-letter word. It's called Uber.
Totally. No, what's interesting is to hear you talk. I had a mentor a long time ago who he would say, he would always tell me, Jay, if you build the people will build the business. And because that was always like his focus. And I hear you saying the same thing.
Absolutely right. And the model I use is when I do keynote speeches, I say, here's what I want you to do. I throw up a video of Cirque du Soleil. I assume you've seen their performances?
I have. I'm wondering where this is going, right?
I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you, Jay. And I say, okay, when you build your workforce and when the culture that you want to have, the model you want to use in your mind is a Cirque du Soleil culture. And let me tell you why. Now, let's say, what is Cirque du Soleil? They're a group of people who come to work every single day, totally wired, totally jazzed up, totally intent on doing better today than they did yesterday. And then I put the question to them, is there a reason you can think of why you don't want a workforce just exactly like that?
No.
Yeah,
no, that's exactly what I want.
And there's a way to build that. There's a methodical, I won't go into it in this segment. There's a methodical way that can be done where you can build. I've done it, and I can show people how to do it, what I call the 7 values of ingenuity. But the most important part of that is building that culture. This was your point a few minutes ago. If you have a culture that's like that, you don't have to tell them anything. All you got to do is give them the tools and the financing and the funding that they need and cheerlead them a little bit and get the hell out of their way.
Yeah. I think that's what every entrepreneur envisions when we first get started, but then we're hit with the reality of how to do that because we've never been taught, trained, or shown. There aren't enough examples to just go, oh, well, this is where we can go to go learn those things. Other than trial and error, what would you suggest?
Yeah, well, at the risk of sounding like I'm self-promoting, you should read my latest book. There's a whole treatment on what I call the 7 values of ingenuity. It tells you step by step how to do it. To your point about this isn't taught, I'm just now in the middle of developing a university course that teaches the fundamentals of creating a Cirque du Soleil culture. And awesome. It's easier to create it from scratch, Jay. When you're an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs they get busy and they're washing the dishes, they're flipping the hamburgers and all that kind of stuff, and then after a while, and then they hire a couple of people, and it sort of gets away from them. But it is easier when you have 1 or 2 employees than it is when you have like United could never change their culture. It's too late. It's too big. It's too mammoth. But if you had 2 or 3 employees, it's really, really easy to build that kind of culture. And it starts with defining what kind of values do you want that culture, because culture is nothing but values. What kind of values do you want in that culture? And then you stack the deck in favor of everything reinforcing those values. What happens is, I'll give you a perfect example of where companies go wrong. They say that they want teamwork, right? Everybody wants teamwork. That's the big thing in business today. But yet, most businesses do individual performance reviews. They don't do team performance reviews, do they?
Good point.
And this is a little facetious, but not too facetious. In a manufacturing environment, the quality guy gets compensated for and evaluated against how many defects leave the factory, right? The manufacturing guy gets compensated for and evaluated against how much stuff he pushes out the back door. So there's an inherent, and then you say, we want you guys to work together, but you're evaluating them and compensating them on 2 different things. And you wonder why there's conflict there, and you wonder why there's no teamwork there. If you want teamwork out of these 2 guys, you say, tell you what, you guys have one goal. It's one goal only, and that's to get it out the back door without any defects. And you both share the same goal. Not one guy have one goal, another guy having a different one. And that's just one example where companies go wrong when they try to build cultures that operate like Cirque du Soleil. You don't see the person in Cirque du Soleil walking into the thing and getting on the trapeze and going, Jay, I'm not sure if I feel like catching you today. We'll see.
Yeah.
But you find that in business every day. People withhold information. People complain about their neighbors. People don't provide the kind of cooperation and effort and resources their teammates need because they're not really functioning like a team.
Yeah, totally understood. I get it. Now, for those that have listened this far, I'm sure they've made the decision long ago. Like, man, I need to know more about what Steve is up to. What's going to be the best way for them to track you down, find out more about what you've got going on, maybe even find out more about some of the books that you've written?
Yeah, the easiest way is Stephen L. Blue, and that's with a V, STEVENLBLUE.com. And I'm sure if you Google, I have quite a Twitter presence and LinkedIn presence and Facebook presence. I'm sorry, I don't really know what the handles are on them, but if you Google me, you'll find me all over the internet.
Got it. Now, as we wind down, I've got a final question for you because I'm kind of curious to hear your answer. Let's pretend for a moment that someone listening is, considering putting their hat in the ring. They're ready to place that bet. They're gonna go and become this entrepreneur. However, maybe they've even gone as far as they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store. They're ready to pick out their cape and tight and make this thing happen. Yet, as they go through that, and as we often do, anytime we have, desires to go bigger, be better, become more, there's that constant companion, and it's often in the form of a voice, and it says things that are usually not as supportive, and it reminds us of what we can't do and why it won't work and how hard it's going to be. And for some people, they're even related to that voice. Yeah. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that they're actually going to follow through this time, Steve. They're going to do what you suggest, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
Well, I would suggest that don't do it in the next 24 to 48 hours because I have another suggestion that they should take before they do it. This is in reaction to your commentary on the voice inside. Everybody has, and there's plenty of psychological advice on how you're supposed to counteract that. But here's what I did. And I've done it many times. I'm sure you're familiar with Tony Robbins and the Firewalk.
I am.
I've done 5 of those.
Nice.
And every time, and of course it's a metaphor and all that kind of stuff. Once you've done the Firewalk, you walk out of that experience with thinking, if I could do that, what else could I do? And if I could do that, there really isn't anything I can't do. And anytime I start feeling anxious and insecure and small, and unmotivated, I just go do a firewalk. And that's what I would suggest an entrepreneur do. Go do a firewalk first. You will find that the limitations that you have, in a very physical way, you'll learn that the limitations you have really are self-imposed.
Wow. Awesome. I totally appreciate that because that was not something that I was expecting. And I definitely appreciate the volume of wisdom, the insight, the knowledge that you've taking the time to share with us here today at the Cashflow Diary.
Well, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed talking to you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means StephenLBlue.com. Go. That's Stephen with the V if you need to be reminded, because you know that you just heard a significant amount of valuable information that has already helped you. And if you want to find out what the 7 values of Ingenuity are, well, there's only one place to go get them, and that's StephenLBlue.com, and you want to get that done today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.